The fluorescent lights of the VA Medical Center in San Diego hummed their familiar tune as Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez adjusted her blood pressure cuff for what felt like the 100th time that morning. At 28, she had already seen more than most people would in a lifetime, but these days, her battlefield was different. Instead of the dusty mountains of Afghanistan, she navigated the sterile hallways of the Veterans Hospital, trading her rifle for a stethoscope, her combat boots for comfortable nursing shoes. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Elena had been working as a registered nurse for 2 years now, ever since her medical discharge from the Marine Corps. The transition hadn't been easy. Some days she missed the adrenaline, the brotherhood, the sense of purpose that came with serving on the front lines. But here, helping her fellow veterans, she had found a different kind of mission, one that mattered just as much, even if it didn't come with the same recognition. Her patients rarely knew about her military background unless they asked directly. She kept her service quiet, professional. The small sniper qualification ring she wore on her right hand was the only visible reminder of who she used to be, and even that went unnoticed by most people. It was a simple silver band with a tiny crossed rifle insignia, hardly noticeable unless you knew what to look for. But for Elena, it represented everything. The grueling months of training, the precision required, the lives she had saved by taking others. The morning had been routine, checking vitals, administering medications, updating charts. Elena moved with the same methodical precision she had once used to line up shots at impossible distances. Every movement was calculated, every decision deliberate. Her supervisor, Janet, often commented on how Elena never seemed flustered, how she handled even the most difficult patients with calm efficiency. "Room 314 is ready for you," called out Marcus, one of the orderlies. "New admission, Marine veteran, just got back from his 3rd deployment. Seems pretty shaken up." Elena nodded, gathering her equipment. She had a special connection with the Marine patients. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared language that didn't require words. She could spot the signs, the way they sat at attention even in hospital beds, the way their eyes constantly scanned exits, the subtle tension that never quite left their shoulders. As she walked toward room 314, Elena mentally prepared herself. Post-deployment patients required extra care, extra patience. Many were dealing with invisible wounds that ran deeper than any physical injury. She had been there herself, in those dark months after her discharge, when every shadow seemed to hide a threat, when the silence of civilian life felt more dangerous than the chaos of war. She knocked gently on the doorframe before entering. "Good morning. I'm Elena, your nurse for today. I'm here to check your blood pressure and take some vitals." The man in the bed looked up, and Elena immediately recognized the look in his eyes. Alert, assessing, guarded. He was probably in his early 30s, with the lean build and perfect posture that screamed Marine even in civilian clothes. His dark hair was regulation short, and despite being in a hospital gown, he somehow still managed to look like he was ready for inspection. "Morning, ma'am," he replied, his voice carrying that distinctive military courtesy that came as naturally as breathing. "No need for the formalities," Elena said with a gentle smile, setting her equipment on the bedside table. "What's your name?" "Gunnery Sergeant David Mitchell, ma'am, but everyone just calls me Gunny." Elena began setting up her blood pressure cuff, her movements smooth and professional. "Well, Gunny, I need to check your vitals and ask you a few questions about how you're feeling today. Is that okay with you?" David nodded, extending his arm automatically. Elena noticed the small tremor in his hand, barely perceptible, but she had been trained to catch details that others missed. As she wrapped the cuff around his arm, she felt him tense slightly at her touch. "Sorry," he muttered. "Still getting used to all this." "No need to apologize," Elena replied softly. "Take your time. We're not in any hurry here." As she began inflating the cuff, Elena found herself studying David's face. She could see the exhaustion behind his eyes, the weight of whatever he had experienced overseas. She had worn that same expression once, staring back at herself in mirrors during those first difficult months of transition. "When did you get back?" she asked, keeping her tone conversational as she monitored the pressure gauge. "3 weeks ago. Third tour. Thought it would get easier, but..." He trailed off, staring at the ceiling. "It never does," Elena said quietly, understanding exactly what he meant. "Each deployment brings its own challenges." The blood pressure cuff deflated with a soft hiss, and Elena made notes on her tablet. "Your pressure's a little elevated, but that's normal given the circumstances. How are you sleeping?" David let out a bitter laugh. "Sleep? What's that?" Elena smiled sympathetically. She remembered those sleepless nights, the way every sound seemed amplified, every shadow suspicious. "The VA has some excellent sleep specialists. We can set you up with an appointment if you'd like." As she reached for her stethoscope, the morning sun streaming through the window caught the small ring on her right hand, making the tiny crossed rifles gleam for just a moment. It was such a brief flash of light that most people would have missed it entirely. But David Mitchell was not most people. David's eyes locked onto Elena's hand with laser-like focus, and she saw the exact moment recognition dawned in his expression. His entire demeanor shifted, his posture straightening even more, if that were possible, his eyes sharpening with the keen attention that had kept him alive through 3 combat deployments. "Ma'am," he said slowly, his voice carrying a new note of respect mixed with curiosity. "Is that what I think it is?" Elena glanced down at her hand, realizing what had caught his attention. For a moment, she considered deflecting, changing the subject. She had gotten good at avoiding these conversations over the past 2 years. But something in David's eyes, a flicker of hope maybe, or recognition of a kindred spirit, made her pause. "Depends on what you think it is," she replied carefully, continuing to listen to his heartbeat through her stethoscope. David's eyes never left her hand. "That's a sniper qualification ring, isn't it? Marine Scout Sniper?" Elena finished taking his pulse and made another note on her tablet, buying herself a moment to decide how to respond. She could see David watching her every movement with the intense focus of someone who understood exactly what that small piece of jewelry represented. "Your heart rate's a bit fast too," she said, avoiding his question. "When was the last time you had a full physical?" But David wasn't deterred. "Ma'am, with all due respect, I've been staring at those crossed rifles for 7 years. I know what a sniper ring looks like." His voice carried the certainty of someone who had spent his entire adult life around Marines, someone who could read the subtle signs and symbols that civilians never noticed. Elena set down her tablet and looked directly at David for the first time since he had spotted her ring. She saw something in his expression that made her reconsider her usual deflection. There was no judgment there, no skepticism, just the recognition of one warrior acknowledging another. "Yes," she said simply, "it is." The effect of her admission was immediate and profound. David's entire body language changed, the tension he had been carrying seeming to ease for the first time since she had entered the room. It was as if a switch had been flipped, revealing the man beneath the guarded exterior. "Jesus," he breathed, shaking his head in amazement. "A female Marine sniper! Ma'am, do you have any idea how rare that is?" Elena couldn't help but smile at his reaction. "I'm aware of the statistics, yes." "What unit?" David asked, his voice filled with the kind of reverence that military personnel reserved for elite specialties. 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines. Did 2 deployments with them before... I gestured vaguely at myself at the hospital around us. "Before what, if you don't mind me asking?" Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. This was the question she got most often from veterans, and it was also the hardest one to answer honestly. "LEID," she said it matter-of-factly, the way she had learned to deliver difficult news to patients' families. "Took some shrapnel to the leg, did some damage to the nerves. Can't hold the rifle steady enough for long-distance work anymore." David was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Elena could see him doing the calculations in his head, understanding the implications without her having to spell them out. For a sniper, losing that steadiness was career-ending in the most final way possible. I'm sorry, he said finally, and Elena could hear the genuine sympathy in his voice. Don't be. I found a new mission. She gestured around the room. Different kind of service, but it still matters. David nodded slowly, his respect for her clearly growing. How many tours? 2 active deployments, but I was in country for almost 3 years total, counting training missions and special assignments. Confirmed kills? The question came out automatically, the way all snipers seem to ask it, as if it was just another statistic like height or weight. Elena's expression grew distant for a moment. 73. The number hung in the air between them, carrying weight that only another combat veteran could truly understand. David let out a low whistle. 73, he repeated quietly. Ma'am, that's incredible. Elena shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise that her service record brought. I was good at my job. Good at your job? David laughed, but there was no humor in it, only amazement. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not good at your job. That's legendary. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had never been comfortable with the attention that her service record brought. It wasn't about the numbers, Gunny. It was about bringing everyone home safe. How many did you bring home safe? All of them, Elena replied without hesitation. Every single Marine under my watch came home. David stared at her for a long moment, and Elena could see something shifting in his expression, a kind of awe mixed with hope that she had seen in other veterans when they realized that they weren't alone in their struggles. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you do it? The transition, I mean. How did you go from that, he gestured toward her ring, to this? He indicated the hospital room, the medical equipment, the civilian world around them. Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. This was the question she got most often from veterans, and it was also the hardest one to answer honestly. One day at a time. And some days were harder than others. David leaned back against his pillows, studying Elena with new eyes. The revelation of her background had completely transformed their interaction, turning what had been a routine medical check into something much more significant. For the first time since he had been admitted to the hospital, David felt like he was talking to someone who might actually understand what he was going through. 73, he murmured again, shaking his head. And you were the only female Marine sniper in your unit? In my battalion, yes. There were a few others in different units, but not many. The Corps was still pretty resistant to women in combat rules when I went through training. Elena began organizing her medical supplies, but her movements were more relaxed now, less clinical. I had to prove myself every single day. I bet you did. David's tone carried no condescension, only respect. What was the longest shot? Elena paused in her organizing, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. 1,200 meters. High wind, moving target. Command said it was impossible. But you made it. I made it. The pride in her voice was subtle, but unmistakable. Saved an entire squad from an ambush they didn't even know was coming. David whistled low. 1,200 meters in wind. That's not just skill, ma'am. That's gift. Elena's expression grew more serious. Sometimes I wonder if it was more like a curse. The weight of that statement settled between them, and David immediately understood what she meant. Every sniper struggled with the duality of their role, the pride in their skill set against the reality of what that skill was used for, the precision required to save lives from a distance, but the knowledge that each saved life often meant another life taken. The nightmares? David asked, quietly. Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak for a moment. It was rare to find someone who understood that particular burden without explanation or judgment. They get better. Different, but better. The VA has some good programs if you're interested. You went through them? All of them. Therapy, group sessions, the works. I fought it at first. You know how Marines are about asking for help. I bet you did, David laughed, a genuine sound this time. Right up until we're not.
Elena's voice carried the wisdom of hard-earned experience. I spent 6 months after my discharge thinking I could handle everything on my own. Nearly cost me everything that mattered. What changed? Elena was quiet for a moment, remembering those dark days when every shadow had seemed to hide a threat, when the silence of civilian life felt more dangerous than any firefight she had ever been in. I almost lost my sister. She tried to help me for months, but I kept pushing everyone away. One night, she found me in my apartment with my service weapon in my hands. Elena's voice remained steady, but David could see the pain in her eyes. That's when I realized that surviving the war was only the first step. Learning to live after the war, that was the real battle. David was quiet, absorbing her words. Elena could see recognition in his expression, the understanding of someone who was fighting that same battle. Is that why you became a nurse, to help other veterans? Partly, but also because I needed a new mission, something that mattered. In the field, my job was to eliminate threats to protect my Marines. Here, my job is to help heal the damage that war leaves behind. Different tools, same basic principle. Elena finished packing up her medical supplies and made a final note on her tablet. Your vitals are stabilizing, which is good. I'll be back to check on you in a few hours. As she turned to leave, David's voice stopped her. Ma'am? Yes? Thank you for telling me about everything. It helps to know that someone like you made it through to the other side. Elena turned back to face him fully. Gunny, let me tell you something. I've seen a lot of Marines in this hospital, and I can just tell by looking at you that you're one of the good ones. You're going to make it through this too. It won't be easy, and some days are going to be harder than others, but you will make it. How can you be so sure? Elena smiled, and for the first time, David saw the steel beneath her gentle exterior, the unwavering determination that had carried her through sniper training, through combat deployments, through the difficult transition to civilian life. Because 73 confirmed kills taught me to recognize survivors, and you, Gunnery Sergeant David Mitchell, are definitely a survivor. After Elena left the room, David stared at the ceiling, replaying their conversation in his mind. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he hadn't expected to feel again. Hope. Not the false hope that well-meaning civilians offered with their empty platitudes about getting better, but real hope grounded in the understanding that came from shared experience. Elena Rodriguez had walked the same dark path he was walking now, had faced the same demons, fought the same battles, struggled with the same questions about purpose and meaning after the war, and somehow she had found her way to the other side. As he drifted off to sleep, real sleep for the first time since his return, his last conscious thought was about that small silver ring and the woman who wore it. Tomorrow, he decided, he would ask her more about her journey. Maybe, with her help, he could finally begin to find his own path forward. The next morning, Elena arrived for her shift with a sense of anticipation she hadn't felt in months. She had spent much of the previous evening thinking about her conversation with David, remembering what it felt like to connect with someone who truly understood her military experience. As she reviewed the patient assignments for the day, she was pleased to see that David was still under her care. She knocked on his doorframe and found him sitting up in bed, looking more alert than he had the day before. His eyes were clearer, and some of the tension seemed to have eased from his shoulders. "Good morning, Gunny. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," David replied, and Elena could hear the surprise in his voice. "I actually slept for 4 straight hours without waking up." "That's progress," Elena said, genuinely pleased. Sleep is one of the first things to improve when you start processing everything properly. As she began her routine vitals check, David watched her movements with the same intense focus as the day before, but now there was respect and curiosity mixed with the attention. "Can I ask you about your training?" he said as she wrapped the blood pressure cuff around his arm. "What was sniper school like for a woman?" Elena smiled grimly. "Brutal. The instructors made it clear from day one that they expected me to fail. Some of them actively tried to make me fail." "But you didn't." "Hell no, I didn't." Elena's voice carried an edge of steel.
I knew that everyone would be watching, waiting for me to prove that women didn't belong in that program. So I made sure I was better than everyone else. I outshot, outmarched, and outperformed every single one of my male classmates. What was your graduation ranking? First in class? Elena stated it simply, without boasting, as if it were just another fact like her height or weight. David shook his head in amazement. First in class? 73 confirmed kills? Ma'am, you're not just a Marine sniper. You're a legend. Elena felt uncomfortable with the praise, as she always did. I was just doing my job, Gunny. No, ma'am, with respect, you were doing your job better than anyone else has ever done it. Elena finished taking his blood pressure and made notes on her tablet. Your pressure is coming down. That's good news. As she moved to check his pulse, David continued his questioning. What was your first deployment like? Elena was quiet for a moment, remembering those early days in Afghanistan when everything had been new and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Terrifying, she said honestly. I was 22 years old, fresh out of sniper school, and suddenly I was responsible for providing overwatch for entire platoons. Every decision I made could mean the difference between Marines going home to their families or coming home in boxes. When was your first kill? The question hung in the air between them. Elena had been asked this question many times over the years, but something about the way David asked it, with genuine understanding rather than morbid curiosity, made her consider answering honestly. 3 weeks into my first deployment, Taliban fighter with an RPG, about 800 meters out. He was setting up to hit a convoy that had Marines from my unit in it. Clean shot, center mass. 1 shot, 1 kill. Elena's voice was matter-of-fact, professional. I threw up immediately after. David nodded, understanding. I remember my first kill too. Different circumstances, but the same feeling afterward. It gets easier, Elena said quietly. The physical act, I mean. The emotional part, that's different for everyone. How did you deal with it? Elena considered her answer carefully. I focused on the mission. Every target I eliminated was a threat neutralized, Marines protected, lives saved. I kept a running count in my head, not just of kills, but of Marines who made it home because of those kills. And after, when you came back? After was harder. Elena's voice grew distant. In country, everything made sense. There were clear lines, obvious threats, defined missions. Back here, in the civilian world, nothing made sense anymore. Elena finished taking David's pulse and moved to check his reflexes, tapping gently on his knee with a small hammer. His response was normal, which she noted with satisfaction. The transition was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than sniper training, harder than combat, harder than recovering from my injuries. What made it so difficult? Elena considered the question carefully. Purpose. In the field, I had a clear purpose. Every day, I knew exactly why I was there and what I was supposed to do. Back here, I felt lost, like I was drifting without direction. Is that why you became a nurse? Partly. I needed to find a new mission, something that mattered. But I also needed to find a way to use the skills I had developed in the military in a constructive way. Skills like what? Attention to detail, the ability to remain calm under pressure, quick decision-making, the capacity to function effectively in high-stress situations. All the things that made me a good sniper also made me a good nurse. David was quiet for a moment, processing this. I've been struggling with that, finding purpose here. Everything feels so trivial compared to what we were doing over there. Elena nodded, understanding. I know exactly what you mean. For months after my discharge, I felt like I was sleepwalking through life. Nothing seemed important enough to care about. What changed? Time, therapy, and eventually I realized that my new mission wasn't going to look like my old mission. It was going to be something completely different, but it could still matter just as much. Elena finished her examination and began packing up her equipment. Your reflexes are good. Everything looks normal. How are you feeling emotionally today? David was quiet for a moment, considering. Better. Talking to you yesterday, it helped. It's been so long since I talked to someone who understood. That's one of the hardest parts about the transition, feeling isolated from people who haven't been through it. Everyone keeps telling me they understand, but they don't. They can't. Elena nodded emphatically. The number of times someone told me they understood what I was going through because they had a bad day at work or went through a difficult breakup, it's maddening. Yes, exactly. David's voice carried relief at finally having someone who understood his frustration. How do you deal with that? I learned to be selective about who I share my experiences with. Most people don't need to know the details, and they wouldn't understand them if they did. But finding other veterans, people who've been there, that's invaluable. Elena finished organizing her supplies and made a final note on her tablet. I'll be back to check on you this afternoon. In the meantime, I want you to think about what kind of mission you might want to pursue once you're feeling better. Mission? Everyone needs a mission, Gunny. Something that gives their life purpose and meaning. It doesn't have to be military, but it has to matter to you.
As Elena turned to leave, David called out to her again. Ma'am? Yes? What's your mission now? Besides being a nurse, I mean. Elena smiled. Helping Marines like you find their way to the other side.
Over the following days, Elena found herself spending more time with David than strictly necessary for his medical care. Their conversations had evolved from the professional exchanges typical between nurse and patient into something deeper, the kind of connection that forms between warriors who recognize themselves in each other. During her breaks, Elena would stop by his room to check on him, ostensibly to monitor his progress, but really to continue their ongoing conversations about service, sacrifice, and the challenges of transitioning to civilian life. David looked forward to these visits, and Elena found herself energized by the opportunity to mentor another veteran through the difficult process she had navigated herself. "Tell me about the worst day," David said during one of her afternoon visits. They had moved past the superficial conversations and into the territory of shared trauma, the dark spaces that only other combat veterans could understand. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her hand unconsciously moving to touch her sniper ring. Helmand Province, 2019. We got intel about a high-value target meeting with local insurgent leaders in a compound about 15 clicks from our base. David leaned forward slightly, recognizing the tone that veterans used when they were about to share something significant. I was providing overwatch for a squad moving in to capture the target. Everything went wrong from the start. The intel was bad. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a trap. The compound was surrounded by IEDs, and there were at least 30 fighters waiting for our guys. Elena's voice remained steady, but David could see the tension building in her shoulders as she relived the memory. I had eyes on the entire situation from my position on a ridgeline about 1,000 meters out. I could see everything. Our guys walking into the trap, the insurgents moving into position, the IEDs waiting to be triggered. I started taking shots, trying to clear a path for extraction. How many targets? 12 confirmed kills in less than 10 minutes, but it wasn't enough. The squad leader, Staff Sergeant Martinez, he was a good Marine, had 3 kids back home. He stepped on an IED, trying to reach wounded Marines who were trapped in the kill zone. Elena paused, and David could see her struggling with the memory. I watched him die through my scope. Watched the whole thing. There was nothing I could do except keep shooting, keep trying to create enough chaos to give the others a chance to get out. Did they make it out? Most of them. We lost Martinez and 2 others, but the rest of the squad made it back. I stayed in position for 6 hours, providing overwatch while the recovery team went in to retrieve the bodies. David was quiet for a long moment, understanding the weight of what she had shared. That wasn't your fault. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. If I had been faster, more accurate, if I had seen the trap sooner. You saved 8 Marines that day, but I lost 3. David recognized the guilt she was carrying, the burden that every combat veteran understood. Ma'am, with respect, those 3 Marines didn't die because you failed. They died because war is hell, and sometimes good people don't make it home. But 8 families got to hug their Marines again because of what you did that day. Elena looked at David with surprise. It was the same logic she had used to counsel other veterans, but somehow hearing it from someone else made it more real. The worst part, she continued, was having to write the after-action report, having to describe in clinical detail everything I had witnessed through my scope. Every shot I took, every decision I made, every second of those Marines dying while I watched. Did that contribute to your decision to leave the Corps? Elena shook her head. That happened 6 months before my injury. I was actually planning to re-enlist when the IED got our convoy. Do you ever regret leaving? Elena considered the question carefully. I regret the circumstances that forced me to leave, but I don't regret building a new life here. This work matters too, just in a different way. How do you know when you found the right new mission? You'll know because it won't feel like work anymore. It'll feel like service again. David was quiet, absorbing her words. I've been thinking about what you said, about finding a new mission. I've been looking at some of the veteran service organizations here in San Diego. Elena's face brightened with genuine interest. That's great. What kind of work? There's an organization that helps homeless veterans get back on their feet. They need people who understand the military mindset, who can relate to what these guys are going through. That sounds perfect for you. You have the leadership experience, the credibility with other Marines, and the understanding of how quickly everything can fall apart, David added quietly. Elena nodded. That too. Sometimes the most important qualification for helping someone is having walked the same path they're walking. Is that why you told me about your sniper service? To show me that you'd walked this path? Elena smiled. Partly, but also because I think it's important for veterans to see that there are many different ways to serve, many different kinds of strength. My strength used to be measured in meters and confirmed kills. Now it's measured in lives helped and healing facilitated. Do you miss it? The action, the adrenaline? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her honest answer. Sometimes. But I've learned that peace is actually more valuable than adrenaline. The ability to sleep through the night, to be present with people you care about, to build something instead of just destroying threats, that's worth more than any rush you get from combat. Even with everything you accomplished, 73 kills, first in your class, successful deployments, especially because of everything I accomplished, those achievements will always be part of who I am, but they don't have to define who I'm becoming. Elena checked her watch and realized she had been talking with David for almost an hour. I need to check on my other patients, but I want you to seriously consider that veteran service organization. I think you'd be great at it. I will. And, ma'am? Yes. Thank you for sharing your story with me. It means more than you know. Elena smiled. That's what Marines do for each other, Gunny. We watch each other's backs no matter where the battlefield is.
2 weeks later, David was preparing for discharge when Elena stopped by his room for what would likely be their final conversation as nurse and patient. She found him packing his few belongings, moving with more purpose and energy than she had seen since his admission. Getting ready to rejoin the world? Elena asked, settling into the visitor's chair she had occupied so many times during their conversations. Yes, ma'am, and I have some news. David's face carried an excitement that Elena hadn't seen before. I met with the director of that veterans service organization yesterday. They offered me a position as a counselor and program coordinator. Elena felt a surge of pride and satisfaction. David, that's wonderful. How do you feel about it? Nervous as hell, I admitted with a laugh, but also excited? I haven't felt excited about anything in months. It feels like I'm finally going to be doing something that matters again. You are. Helping other veterans find their way, that's as important as any mission you ever had in the Corps. David sat down on the edge of his bed, facing Elena. I want to thank you for everything you've done for me, not just the medical care, but everything else. The conversations, the guidance, helping me see that there was a path forward. Elena smiled warmly. You did the hard work, Gunny. I just shared some experience. It was more than that, and you know it. That first day, when you told me about your sniper service, it changed everything for me. For the first time since I got back, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. Elena nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. That's the power of shared experience. When someone who's walked the same path tells you it gets better, you can actually believe them. I want to ask you something, and I hope it's not inappropriate. Go ahead. Would you consider being a reference for me? For this new job, I mean. They want to talk to people who know about my transition process, and I can't think of anyone whose opinion would carry more weight. Elena was touched by the request. Of course, David. I'd be honored. Thank you. David was quiet for a moment, then looked directly at Elena. Can I ask you something else? What are your plans? I mean, beyond working here at the hospital. Elena was surprised by the question. What do you mean? I mean, you're obviously brilliant at helping veterans through the transition process. Have you ever considered doing it more formally? Maybe working with veteran service organizations or starting your own counseling practice? Elena had never seriously considered expanding her role beyond nursing, but David's question sparked something in her mind. I hadn't really thought about it. My focus has been on mastering this job, on being the best nurse I can be. But you're already doing it, David pointed out. Every veteran who comes through here benefits from your understanding and experience. You have a gift for this, ma'am. You helped me find hope when I didn't think it was possible. Elena was quiet for a moment, considering his words. It's an interesting idea. I'd need additional training, certifications. You'd figure it out. You figured out how to be the best sniper in the Marine Corps. You figured out how to transition from warrior to healer. This would just be the next evolution. Actually, Elena said slowly, the director of psychology here has mentioned something similar. She's been encouraging me to consider pursuing a graduate degree in counseling psychology with a focus on veteran services. See? Even other people recognize your potential. David's enthusiasm was infectious. Ma'am, think about how many veterans you could help if you had a formal practice. Think about how many Marines you could guide through this transition. Elena found herself genuinely intrigued by the possibility. It would be a significant commitment, probably 2 to 3 years of additional education while working full-time. You've done harder things. Elena laughed. True, and it would be a way to expand my mission to help more people. Exactly. You saved 73 lives with your rifle. Imagine how many you could save with your experience and wisdom. The parallel struck Elena powerfully. She had never thought about her work with veterans in those terms before, but David was right. This was another way to save lives, just using different tools. I'll think about it, she said finally. Seriously think about it. Good. And when you do start your practice, I hope you'll consider hiring an assistant who understands the veteran experience. Elena grinned. Is that your way of asking for a job, Gunny? Maybe, once I get some experience under my belt with this new position. Elena stood up and extended her hand to David. It's been an honor working with you, Gunnery Sergeant Mitchell. I expect great things from you. David stood and shook her hand firmly. The honor has been mine, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, and I expect great things from you, too. As Elena turned to leave, David called out one final time. Ma'am? Yes? That ring you wear, it represents more than just your marksmanship skills. It represents your commitment to protecting and serving others.
Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you need to hide it or apologize for it. Elena looked down at her sniper qualification ring, the small piece of silver that had started their entire conversation. I won't, she said firmly. And David, when you're helping other veterans, remember that your service matters too. What you did over there, what you're going to do here, it all matters. After David left the hospital the next day, Elena found herself thinking about their conversation. For the first time since her transition to civilian life, she was considering a major change, a new direction that could expand her ability to help other veterans. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, researching graduate programs in counseling psychology. As she read about the requirements and coursework, she felt the same excitement she had experienced years ago when she first decided to pursue sniper training. It was the feeling of finding a new challenge worthy of her skills and dedication. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for Dr. Sarah Chen, the hospital's director of psychology, who had been encouraging her to consider additional education. Sarah, it's Elena Rodriguez. Do you have a few minutes to talk about that graduate program you mentioned? I think I'm ready to take the next step. 3 months later, Elena was enrolled in her first graduate psychology course while continuing to work full-time at the hospital. The coursework was challenging, but no more so than sniper school had been. She approached her studies with the same methodical precision she had once used to line up impossible shots, and her professors quickly recognized her unique perspective and dedication. David had thrived in his new role with the Veteran Service Organization, and Elena and David maintained regular contact. They often discussed challenging cases and shared strategies for helping veterans navigate the transition process. Elena found that having David as a colleague and sounding board made her own work more effective. The small sniper qualification ring continued to serve as a conversation starter with veteran patients, a visible symbol that their nurse understood their experiences in ways that went beyond medical training. Elena had learned to embrace rather than hide this aspect of her identity, recognizing that her military service was not something to be left in the past, but rather a foundation upon which to build her future service. 6 months after David's discharge, Elena received a phone call that would change everything.
The phone call came on a Tuesday evening while Elena was studying for her midterm exams in abnormal psychology. She almost didn't answer, seeing an unknown number from Washington, D.C., but something made her pick up. Elena Rodriguez? The voice was crisp, professional, military. Speaking. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, this is Colonel Patricia Morrison, United States Marine Corps. I'm calling because we have a situation that requires your particular expertise. Elena felt her heart rate spike. She hadn't been called by her rank in months, and hearing it now brought back a flood of memories and emotions. Colonel, I'm not active duty anymore. I was medically discharged. I'm aware of your service record, Staff Sergeant. I'm also aware of your current work at the VA hospital and your graduate studies in psychology. That's exactly why I'm calling. Elena set down her textbook and gave the call her full attention. What kind of situation? We have a female Marine, Lance Corporal Jessica Wong, who's currently stationed at Camp Pendleton. She recently completed Scout Sniper School, graduated second in her class. Elena felt a surge of pride for a woman she had never met. That's outstanding. There still aren't many of us. No, there aren't, which is part of the problem. Lance Corporal Wong is struggling with some issues related to her training and her integration into her unit. She's facing challenges that her male counterparts don't face. Elena understood immediately. Harassment, discrimination? Among other things. The command structure is trying to be supportive, but frankly, none of us have walked the path she's walking. We need someone who has. Elena was quiet for a moment, processing the request. What exactly are you asking me to do, Colonel? We'd like you to come to Camp Pendleton and spend some time with Lance Corporal Wong. Unofficial mentorship, if you will. Share your experience, help her navigate the challenges she's facing. I'm not a certified counselor yet. I'm still in school. We're not asking for formal counseling. We're asking for one female Marine sniper to help another. Your service record speaks for itself, Staff Sergeant. 73 confirmed kills, first in your class, 2 successful deployments. You've already proven that it can be done. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She thought about her own struggles during and after sniper training, the isolation, the constant pressure to prove herself.
the lack of anyone who truly understood what she was going through. When would you need me there? This weekend, if possible. We can arrange travel and accommodations. You'd be there as a civilian contractor, compensated for your time. Elena looked at her textbooks, spread across the table, thought about her work schedule at the hospital, considered all the reasons why this would be complicated to arrange. I'll be there. Excellent. I'll have my aide send you the details. And Staff Sergeant? Yes, ma'am? Thank you. This could make all the difference for her. After she hung up, Elena sat staring at her phone for several minutes. She hadn't expected to be pulled back into the military world, even temporarily, but she understood the importance of what was being asked of her. If she could help another female Marine navigate the challenges of being a sniper, if she could prevent someone else from feeling as isolated and overwhelmed as she had sometimes felt, then it was worth any inconvenience. She called David to tell him about the request. That's incredible. You're going to be her lifeline, just like you were mine. It's different, though. I'm not a trained counselor yet. Elena, you've been counseling veterans since the day you started working at the hospital. You have more real-world experience helping people through military transitions than most people with advanced degrees. I'm nervous about it. What if I can't help her? Then you'll have tried, which is more than anyone else is doing. But I don't think you need to worry about that. You have a gift for this. Elena spent the rest of the week preparing for her trip to Camp Pendleton. She reached out to Dr. Chen for advice on how to approach the mentorship role without overstepping into formal counseling territory. She researched current policies regarding women in combat roles and read everything she could find about recent developments in sniper training. On Friday afternoon, she flew from San Diego to Los Angeles and then drove to Camp Pendleton. As she passed through the base gates for the first time in 3 years, she felt a complex mix of emotions: nostalgia, pride, and a deep sense of coming home. Colonel Morrison met her at the base headquarters, a tall woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone who had spent her entire career fighting for respect in a male-dominated field. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, thank you for coming. I can't tell you how much this means to us. Thank you for thinking of me, Colonel. Can you tell me more about Lance Corporal Wong's situation? As they walked across the base, Colonel Morrison filled in the details. Jessica Wong was 21 years old, had enlisted straight out of high school, and had excelled in every aspect of her military training. She had requested sniper training and had performed exceptionally well, but since joining her unit, she had been struggling with integration issues. Some of it is the typical hazing that all snipers face, but some of it is specifically targeted at her gender. Comments about her physical capabilities, suggestions that she doesn't belong, questions about whether she can handle the psychological aspects of the job. Elena felt anger building in her chest. What has the command done about it? They've tried to address it through official channels, but it's difficult to combat subtle harassment and exclusion. These Marines are too smart to do anything overtly actionable. And how is she handling it? She's withdrawn, isolated. Her performance is still excellent, but her mental state is concerning. She's requested a transfer out of the sniper program. Elena stopped walking. She wants to quit? She does, and frankly, we can't afford to lose her. She's too talented, and we need more women like her in these roles. Elena understood the larger implications. If she quit, it would reinforce the stereotype that women couldn't handle the pressure of being a sniper. It would make it harder for future women to gain acceptance in the program. Where is she now? I've arranged for you to meet her at the base coffee shop. Neutral territory, casual setting. She knows you're coming, and she knows about your background. Elena felt her heart racing as they approached the coffee shop. In a few minutes, she would meet a young woman who was facing the same challenges she had faced years ago. The difference was that Elena had managed to push through and succeed despite the obstacles. Now she had to find a way to help Jessica do the same. One more thing, Colonel Morrison said as they reached the entrance. She doesn't know about your current work with veterans or your graduate studies. She just knows you were a successful Marine sniper. You can share as much or as little as you think is appropriate. Elena nodded, touching her sniper qualification ring for luck. I'll take it from there, Colonel.
Elena spotted Jessica Wong immediately when she entered the coffee shop. The young woman sat alone at a corner table, her posture ramrod straight, despite being in civilian clothes.
She had the lean build and alert eyes that Elena recognized in all successful snipers. But there was something guarded about her expression, a wariness that went beyond normal military bearing. Elena approached the table with the same careful attention she had once used on approach marches. Jessica looked up as she neared, and Elena saw recognition flash in her eyes as she spotted the sniper qualification ring. Lance Corporal Wong, I'm Elena Rodriguez. Jessica stood immediately, offering a firm handshake. Ma'am, thank you for coming. Colonel Morrison said you might be able to help me with some things. Elena gestured for Jessica to sit back down and took the chair across from her. Please, call me Elena. I'm not active duty anymore, so we don't need to stand on ceremony. Jessica nodded, but remained at attention even while seated. Elena could see the tension radiating from her, the carefully controlled stress of someone who had been fighting battles on multiple fronts. I understand you graduated second in your sniper class, Elena said, beginning with something positive. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Elena. Jessica's voice carried pride mixed with frustration. I missed first place by 2 points on the final field exercise. That's outstanding. Scout Sniper School is one of the most challenging programs in the military. You should be proud of what you accomplished. I am proud. That's part of what makes this so frustrating. Elena leaned forward slightly. Tell me about the frustration. Jessica was quiet for a moment, clearly weighing how much to share. Elena recognized the internal debate, the conflict between military discipline that discouraged complaining and the need to talk to someone who might understand. It's not what I expected. I thought that if I proved myself in training, if I graduated at the top of my class, that would be enough. I thought my performance would speak for itself. But it hasn't. Every day feels like I'm still trying to prove myself. Every shot I take, every decision I make, it's scrutinized more closely than anyone else's. If I miss a target, it's because women don't have the upper body strength for long-range shooting. If I take too long to set up a shot, it's because women are too emotional to handle the pressure. Elena felt a familiar anger building in her chest. She had faced the same double standards, the same impossible expectations. But if you excel, if you outperform everyone else, then it's because the instructors went easy on me, or because they lowered the standards for women. Jessica's voice grew firmer. That's part of what makes this so frustrating. Elena leaned forward slightly. I know exactly what you mean. In my first unit, I had to be twice as good as everyone else to be considered half as capable. How did you deal with it? Elena considered her answer carefully. Honestly, some days I didn't deal with it well. There were times I wanted to quit, times I thought maybe everyone was right and I didn't belong there. Jessica looked surprised. Based on Elena's reputation, she had probably expected to hear about unwavering confidence and easy success. What changed your mind? I realized that every time I wanted to quit, I wasn't just quitting on myself. I was quitting on every woman who might come after me. If I failed, it would be used as evidence that women couldn't handle the job. If I succeeded, it would open doors for others. That's a lot of pressure. It is. And it's not fair that we have to carry that burden when our male counterparts don't. But it's the reality of being a pioneer. Jessica was quiet for a moment, absorbing Elena's words. Do you ever regret it, putting yourself through all that? Elena thought about the question seriously. No. Even with all the challenges, even with the harassment and the isolation, I don't regret it. Being a Marine sniper was the greatest honor of my life. Was? Elena realized she had used the past tense. It still is. Just because I'm not active duty anymore doesn't mean that I'm still a Marine sniper. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? Elena gave Jessica a brief overview of her injury and medical discharge, focusing on the facts rather than the emotional impact. I'm sorry, Jessica said when she finished. Don't be. It led to my current work, which is fulfilling in different ways. I'm a nurse now, working primarily with veterans. I'm also in graduate school studying psychology. Jessica's eyes widened. You're studying psychology? I am. I realized that my experience as a sniper and a veteran gave me insights that could help other people transitioning from military to civilian life. That's incredible! You found a way to keep serving. Exactly. Which brings me to something I want to discuss with you. Elena leaned forward. Have you thought about what you want your legacy to be? Jessica looked confused. My legacy? As a female Marine sniper, do you want to be remembered as someone who quit when things got difficult, or as someone who persevered and paved the way for others? I want to be remembered as someone who succeeded, Jessica said without hesitation. Then you need to stay. Not just for yourself, but for every young woman who's watching you, wondering if she could do what you're doing. Jessica was quiet for a long moment. It's so hard, though. Some days I feel like I'm fighting the enemy and my own unit at the same time. Elena nodded understandingly. I know. And I'm not going to tell you it gets easier, because it doesn't. But I will tell you that it gets more manageable. You develop thicker skin. You learn to pick your battles, and eventually you prove yourself so thoroughly that even the doubters have to respect your abilities. How long does that take? Elena smiled grimly. Longer than it should. But the first confirmed kill helps. There's something about successful performance in actual combat that tends to quiet the critics. Have you had to kill people? Elena looked directly at Jessica, seeing in her eyes the same mixture of curiosity and apprehension that she had once felt herself. Yes, 73 confirmed kills over 2 deployments. Jessica's eyes widened. 73? Each one was necessary. Each one saved Marine lives. And each one took something from me that I had to work to get back. What do you mean? Elena was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. Taking a life, even when it's justified, even when it's necessary, changes you. You have to find a way to live with what you've done while still being able to do it again if necessary.
How do you live with it? Jessica asked quietly. The killing, I mean. Elena had been asked this question many times over the years, by other veterans, by therapists, by herself in the dark hours of early morning when sleep wouldn't come. She had learned that there was no simple answer, no easy way to explain the complex emotional reality of taking lives in service of saving others. You focus on the mission, Elena said finally. Every person I killed was a threat to Marines under my protection. Every shot I took prevented American casualties. You have to hold on to that purpose, that meaning. But doesn't it haunt you? Elena nodded honestly. Sometimes. There are faces I remember, situations that replay in my mind, but I've learned that guilt over necessary actions is less destructive than guilt over necessary actions not taken. Jessica absorbed this, clearly trying to imagine herself in similar situations. Do you think I'm ready for that? For combat? That's not for me to decide. But I will tell you that the technical skills are only part of being a successful sniper. The mental preparation, the emotional resilience, those are just as important. How do you prepare for something like that? Elena considered the question carefully. You focus on your training, your mission, and your Marines. When the time comes, you don't think about the person in your crosshairs as someone's son or father or brother. You think about them as a threat to people you're sworn to protect. Is it easier after the first one? Easier isn't the right word. More familiar, maybe. But each situation is different. Each decision carries its own weight. Jessica was quiet for a moment, processing Elena's words. Can I ask you about something else? Of course.
How do you deal with the isolation, not just from the job, but from being the only woman? Elena's expression softened. This was perhaps the most difficult aspect of being a female sniper, the profound loneliness that came from occupying a space where you were constantly proving yourself while having no peers who truly understood your experience. That's the hardest part, Elena admitted. You can't really talk to your male teammates about the specific challenges you face because they haven't experienced them, and you can't talk to other women because most of them haven't been in combat roles. So what do? You learn to be comfortable with yourself. You develop internal strength that doesn't depend on external validation. And you find ways to connect with people who understand the broader experience of military service, even if they don't understand your specific role. Did you have anyone to talk to when you were active? Elena shook her head. Not really. There were so few female snipers that I never served with another one. I had good relationships with some of the men in my unit, but there were always boundaries, things I couldn't share with them. That sounds incredibly lonely. It was, and that's part of why I wanted to meet with you. I don't want you to feel as isolated as I sometimes did. Jessica's expression brightened slightly. Does that mean you'd be willing to stay in touch after this weekend? Absolutely. I want you to know that you have someone you can call when things get difficult, someone who understands what you're going through. Thank you. That means more than you know. Elena pulled out her phone and they exchanged contact information. Now, let's talk about some practical strategies for dealing with the harassment and exclusion you're facing. For the next hour, Elena shared specific techniques she had developed for handling difficult situations, how to respond to inappropriate comments, how to document concerning behavior, and how to build alliances with supportive colleagues. She taught Jessica the art of strategic visibility, being present and competent in ways that made it impossible to ignore or dismiss her contributions. The key is to never give them ammunition. Be early to everything, volunteer for the most challenging assignments, and maintain perfect equipment standards. Make it impossible for anyone to question your dedication or professionalism. But what about when they make it personal? When they attack you as a woman rather than critiquing your performance? Elena's expression hardened. You document everything. Dates, times, witnesses, exact words. You build a case. And if it continues, you report it through official channels. What if that makes things worse? It might, initially, but you're not responsible for their behavior, only for your response to it. And other women who come after you will benefit from your willingness to stand up for yourself. Have you ever had to file formal complaints? Once. A sergeant in my second unit made it clear that he thought women had no business in combat roles. He tried to sabotage my performance during training exercises. What happened? I documented everything, reported it to my commanding officer, and requested a transfer to a different unit. The sergeant was disciplined, and I went on to have a very successful deployment with my new team. Do you regret reporting him? Not for a second. His behavior was unprofessional and potentially dangerous. If I hadn't reported it, he would have continued to harass other women. Jessica nodded, clearly taking mental notes. I think I need to start documenting some of the things that have been happening. Good. And remember, you don't have to tolerate behavior that crosses the line. There's a difference between normal military hazing and targeted harassment. How do you tell the difference? Normal hazing is equal opportunity. Everyone gets it, and it serves a purpose in building unit cohesion. Targeted harassment is personal, discriminatory, and designed to make you quit. Elena looked at her watch and realized they had been talking for almost 3 hours. Jessica looked more relaxed than she had when they first sat down, some of the tension having eased from her shoulders. How are you feeling about everything we've discussed? Better, more prepared. Like I have a plan instead of just enduring whatever happens. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
You're not powerless in this situation, Jessica. You have options, you have support, and you have the skills to succeed. I feel like I can actually do this now. Like, maybe I don't have to quit. You don't have to quit. You're going to be an outstanding Marine sniper, and someday you're going to be the one mentoring the next generation of women in this role.
The next morning, Elena met Jessica at the shooting range. Colonel Morrison had arranged for them to have access to the sniper course, giving Elena an opportunity to observe Jessica's technical skills firsthand. As they walked to the firing line, Elena could see the difference in Jessica's demeanor from the previous day. She moved with more confidence, her shoulders back, her stride purposeful. The conversation seemed to have reminded her of her own capabilities and restored some of her fighting spirit. "Show me what you've got," Elena said as Jessica settled into position behind the rifle. Elena watched through binoculars as Jessica engaged targets at various distances. Her form was textbook perfect, her breathing controlled, her trigger control smooth and consistent. She hit target after target with precision that would have impressed any instructor. "Outstanding!" Elena called out after Jessica completed the course. "Your fundamentals are solid. Your accuracy is exceptional. Technically, you're ready for deployment." Jessica looked pleased, but not entirely satisfied. "My unit commander says my shot groups are too inconsistent under pressure." "Show me what you mean." Elena had Jessica run through a stress course designed to elevate heart rate and adrenaline before taking shots. She watched carefully as Jessica's performance degraded slightly under the added pressure. "I see the issue," Elena said after observing several iterations. "You're overthinking the shots when you're stressed. You're second-guessing yourself instead of trusting your training." "How do I fix that?" Elena took position behind the rifle herself, settling into the familiar embrace of the weapon that had defined so much of her military career. Despite her injury, her hands were steady as she lined up the shot. "Watch my breathing pattern," she told Jessica. "Watch how I settle into the rifle, how I find my natural point of aim." Elena fired several shots, each one hitting center mass despite the stress course she had just completed. Her form was fluid, automatic, the result of thousands of hours of practice. "How do you stay so calm?" Jessica asked. "I don't stay calm. I accept the adrenaline and work with it instead of fighting it." Elena stood and gestured for Jessica to take her position again. "Stress is information. Your body is telling you that this matters, that you need to perform. Use that energy instead of trying to suppress it." Jessica tried again, this time focusing on Elena's advice about accepting rather than fighting her physiological response. Her shot groups tightened noticeably. Better. Much better. Elena was genuinely impressed with Jessica's ability to adapt her technique so quickly. You have the talent and the technical skills. What you need now is confidence in your abilities. It's hard to feel confident when everyone around you is waiting for you to fail. Elena nodded, understanding. "I know. But you can't control their expectations. You can only control your performance. And your performance speaks for itself." After the shooting session, they walked back across the base together. Elena could see that Jessica was processing everything they discussed, integrating the technical feedback with the broader conversation about perseverance and purpose. "Can I ask you something?" Jessica said as they neared the headquarters building. "Always." "Do you think I have what it takes? Not just technically, but mentally, emotionally?" Elena stopped walking and turned to face Jessica directly. "I think you have everything it takes and more. You graduated second in one of the most demanding programs in the military. You've maintained your performance standards despite facing harassment and discrimination. You're asking the right questions and seeking the support you need. Those are all signs of someone who will succeed. But what if I get to combat and I can't pull the trigger when it matters?" Elena had wondered the same thing before her first deployment. Every sniper did. It was impossible to know how you'd react in the moment when everything depended on your ability to take a life. "You'll pull the trigger," Elena said with certainty. "Because when that moment comes, it won't be about you anymore. It will be about the Marines depending on you to protect them.
and I can tell just by talking to you that you would never let your Marines down." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "Thank you for believing in me, for sharing your experience, and for making this trip. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to help. It means more to me than you know." Elena spent the rest of the weekend observing Jessica's interactions with her unit and providing guidance on specific situations. She met with Jessica's commanding officer to discuss strategies for better integration and support. By the time she left Camp Pendleton on Sunday evening, she felt confident that Jessica had the tools and mindset she needed to succeed. During the flight back to San Diego, Elena reflected on the weekend and what it meant for her own future. Working with Jessica had reminded her of the satisfaction that came from mentoring and developing other Marines. It had also shown her how much she had learned about leadership, resilience, and overcoming adversity. When she returned to work at the hospital on Monday, Elena found herself looking at her role with fresh eyes. Every veteran patient represented an opportunity to share her experience and help someone navigate their own challenges. Her graduate studies in psychology were giving her new tools and frameworks for this work. But the foundation was her own experience as a warrior who had successfully transitioned to a different kind of service. David called her that evening to hear about the trip. "How did it go?" he asked. "It went really well. She's going to be fine. More than fine. She's going to be outstanding." "And how are you? How did it feel to be back on base, to be mentoring another sniper?" Elena considered the question. "It felt like coming home, like I had found another piece of my mission." "Sounds like you might have found your calling." Elena smiled, touching her sniper qualification ring. "I think I might have."
2 years later, Elena stood in front of a packed auditorium at the San Diego Convention Center, delivering the keynote address at the National Conference on Veteran Mental Health. She wore her dress blues for the first time since her discharge, her sniper qualification ring gleaming under the stage lights alongside her other decorations. "When I was medically discharged from the Marine Corps 4 years ago," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone, "I thought my service was over. I thought that my identity as a warrior, as someone who protected and served others, had ended with my injury." In the audience, she could see David in the front row, now the director of Veteran Services for 3 counties in Southern California. Next to him sat Dr. Sarah Chen, who had become not just a mentor, but a close friend and colleague. Scattered throughout the auditorium were dozens of veterans she had worked with over the years, people whose lives had been touched by her unique combination of military experience and psychological training. "What I learned," Elena continued, "is that service doesn't end when you take off the uniform. It just changes forms. The same skills that made me a successful sniper, attention to detail, the ability to remain calm under pressure, the commitment to protecting others, those skills translated directly to my work as a nurse and now as a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in veteran mental health." Elena had completed her doctoral program the previous spring, graduating summa cum laude and immediately opening a private practice focused on helping veterans transition to civilian life. Her client list included everyone from recently discharged privates to retired generals, all seeking help from someone who truly understood their experiences. The warrior ethos doesn't have to die when your military service ends. It just needs to find new expression, new missions worthy of the skills and dedication you developed in uniform. After her presentation, Elena was approached by dozens of conference attendees, mental health professionals, veteran advocates, and veterans themselves. But the conversation that mattered most came from a young Army veteran named Sarah Martinez, a former combat medic who was struggling with her own transition. "Dr. Rodriguez," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, "I've been trying to find a therapist who understands what I've been through. When I saw your presentation, when I learned about your background, I finally feel like there might be someone who gets it." Elena smiled warmly, recognizing the hope and desperation she had once felt herself. "Tell me about your service, Sarah."
3 deployments as a combat medic. I saved a lot of lives, but I also lost some. Now I'm working as a civilian EMT, but I keep having nightmares, flashbacks. My family keeps telling me to get over it and move on. Elena handed Sarah her business card. Call my office tomorrow. We'll set up an appointment and we'll work through this together. Thank you, Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes. I was starting to think there was no hope. There's always hope, Elena replied firmly. I learned that from a Marine who refused to give up on himself, and from another Marine who needed to know she wasn't alone in her fight. As the conference wound down, Elena found herself thinking about Jessica Wong, who had just completed her first deployment as a Marine sniper. Jessica excelled in combat, earning the respect of her unit and proving beyond doubt that she belonged in the role. They still spoke regularly, and Elena had watched with pride as Jessica had become a mentor to other women entering the sniper program. David approached her as she was packing up her materials. Outstanding presentation, he said. I counted at least 20 people who asked for your contact information. It's amazing how many veterans are out there struggling in silence, thinking they're the only ones who feel this way. Just like we both did at one point. Elena nodding, remembering those dark days after her discharge when she had felt completely alone. The difference is that now we know better, and we can help others know better too. Speaking of which, I have some news. David's expression grew serious. I got a call from the Department of Veterans Affairs yesterday. They're looking for someone to head up a new national program for veteran mental health. Someone with both clinical credentials and military experience. Elena raised her eyebrow. That sounds like a big job. It is. It would mean moving to Washington, D.C., overseeing programs in all 50 states, working with Congress on veteran mental health legislation, and you think I should apply. I think you're the only person in the country qualified for it. Your combination of combat experience, clinical training, and demonstrated success in helping veterans transition, there's nobody else like you. Elena was quiet for a moment. Considering the implications, it would mean leaving her private practice, leaving the direct patient care that had become such an important part of her identity. But it would also mean the opportunity to impact veteran mental health on a national scale, to shape policies and programs that could help millions of veterans. It's a big decision, she said finally. It is. But think about the mission, Elena. Think about how many veterans you could help. That evening, Elena sat on her apartment balcony overlooking San Diego Bay, watching the sunset over the water. She held a letter that had arrived that morning, a handwritten note from Jessica Wong, writing from her forward operating base in Syria. Elena, I wanted you to know that I made my first confirmed kill last week. A sniper who had been targeting our patrols for days. It was a clean shot at 900 meters, and it probably saved a dozen Marine lives. I thought about our conversation at Camp Pendleton, about focusing on the mission and the Marines you're protecting. It helped me stay calm and make the shot when it mattered. Thank you for showing me that I belong here, and for teaching me how to carry the weight of what we do. I'm proud to follow in your footsteps. Elena folded the letter carefully, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and pride. Jessica had found her way just as Elena had found hers. The chain of mentorship and support continued, each generation of warriors helping the next. She picked up her phone and dialed David's number. I've made a decision about that VA position, she said when he answered. And? I'm going to apply. You're right. It's about the mission, and this mission is too important to pass up. 6 months later, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was sworn in as the Director of National Veteran Mental Health Services. At the ceremony in Washington, D.C., she wore her dress blues once again, her sniper qualification ring visible as she raised her right hand to take the oath of office. In the audience sat dozens of veterans whose lives she had touched. David, who had become her deputy director, Jessica, who had taken leave to attend the ceremony, Sarah Martinez, who was now training to become a peer counselor, and countless others who had found hope and healing through Elena's unique combination of warrior experience and clinical expertise. As she spoke at the reception afterward, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From a young woman fighting to prove herself in sniper school, to a warrior with 73 confirmed kills, to a wounded veteran struggling with transition, to a nurse helping others heal, to a psychologist providing professional care, and now to a national leader shaping policy for millions of veterans. Service never ends, she told the gathered crowd. It just evolves. The same dedication that made us good soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines can make us good citizens, good professionals, good leaders in whatever field we choose to pursue. She touched her sniper qualification ring, the small piece of silver that had started so many important conversations, that had connected her with David and Jessica and countless others. She said, "This ring represents more than marksmanship. It represents precision, dedication, the willingness to take on the hardest jobs and see them through to completion. Those qualities will serve us well in whatever mission comes next." As the evening wound down, Elena stepped outside onto the balcony of the hotel ballroom, looking out over the lights of the nation's capital. Tomorrow, she would begin the most important mission of her life, ensuring that no veteran would have to face the challenges of transition alone. She thought about the young woman she had been, fighting for acceptance and respect in a world that didn't think she belonged. She thought about the wounded warrior she had become, struggling to find purpose after her military service ended. And she thought about the leader she was now, with the opportunity to shape the future of veteran care for generations to come. The warrior's journey never really ended, Elena realized. It just found new battlefields, new missions, new ways to serve something greater than yourself. And that, she thought, as she watched the lights of Washington twinkle in the distance, is exactly as it should be.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.